this is a government that does not represent the majority of Israelis anymore. Our argument will certainly be that a government that was in charge on October 7th cannot be allowed to carry on. A prime minister who was responsible for the greatest security failure in our history cannot be allowed to carry on.
Now they, and let's be clear, mostly Donald Trump, put an end to the conflict in Gaza. The killing hasn't quite stopped, not where Hamas is concerned, as its gunmen continue to patrol the streets and carry out summary executions of those deemed a threat. The Israel Defense Force shot and killed at least 6 Palestinians today. President Trump has granted Hamas a license to continue keeping order and killing, as it turns out, in the hiatus before a transfer of power. Now, how long may that go on? We're going to be talking about that on the show. In any event, an end to the conflict, the release of the hostages and exchange of around 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees, they amounted to a huge achievement, historic even, the most significant event in 2 millennia. That's according to Israel's leaders in their eagerness to keep on President Trump's good side. But now begins the really hard bit, making the peace stick, finding a way to govern and rebuild Gaza. It sounds an almost impossibly hard task, and it could be a lot harder than it sounds. In a moment, we're going to get the latest thoughts of Anshel Pfeffer, the highly respected analyst, the writer on Israel, and I'm going to be talking live to an Israeli opposition leader, Yair Lapid's advisor, Yair Zivan. What do you think? Send me a text, 87222. Start with the word Times and tell me. And also on the show, is President Trump about to side unequivocally with Ukraine against Russia and provide the weapons that might tilt the balance against Russia and the leader that he spent so long, well, rather soft-soaping and cultivating as a potential future trade and business partner, Vladimir Putin? We'll talk about that too on today's show. First, though, in Israel, the families of the returned hostages have been speaking from the hospitals where they're being treated. Now, here's the brother-in-law of 48-year-old Omri Miran.
Since Omri returned, he's trying to process everything as much as he can. We are trying to process his happy return from captivity. He's doing as well as one can expect. The road to healing is still very long, but we were happy to see he's in a relatively stable condition. He will be running through tests in the hospital to ensure that he can be released in the next couple of days or weeks. And once he's ready, he'll return home to where my sister and my nieces are.
And the sister-in-law of Eitan and Ir Horn.
So Eitan was released less than 24 hours ago, so he's not sharing so much. He's just like throwing here and there some stories. He asked for meat, and when he got this plate with this huge piece of meat, he was excited, and I saw tears in his eyes, and I think that means a lot. I don't know, it's ups and downs all the time. He's sharing something and then we're laughing about something else, and he's hugging my kids all the time. He needs to touch them and embrace them and see that he's really home.
Now in Gaza, less than 24 hours since the signing of a peace deal, Hamas published a video of the public execution of dozens of people in a crackdown on rival groups. And the IDF says 6 Palestinians were killed because they crossed the yellow line, behind which the Israeli army has withdrawn. Here, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer addressed the Commons earlier, acknowledging the challenges ahead.
While the signing yesterday was historic, what matters now is implementation and getting help in as quickly as possible. The UK is providing £20 million in additional humanitarian support to get water, sanitation and hygiene products to tens of thousands of civilians across Gaza.
That's Keir Starmer speaking in the Commons. Now, Hamas has until the end of the day to return the remaining bodies of the hostages. Israel said it will limit the flow of aid and keep the Rafah crossing closed if it's not fulfilled. Let's welcome to the programme, back to the programme, Anshel Pfeffer, The Economist's Israel correspondent. Hello to you, Anshel.
Good evening, John.
Hi, it's good to have you. So, Anshel, in Gaza, then, it is still looking messy. It is still looking in many ways bloody in this hiatus before some transition to a new kind of order.
Well, this is not surprising because what basically was done in the last round of negotiations, which led to the ceasefire, was a focus on the immediate steps that needed to be taken to secure the ceasefire, the hostage release and the prisoner exchange, the withdrawal of the Israeli army from roughly half of the territory of Gaza and allowing aid back in again. So those were the main things that needed to happen for this, for this to take place. But this was basically front-ending it without talking about any of the other very thorny issues of the immediate aftermath of the ceasefire. So I think it worked so far. Most of the things that were supposed to happen in the first phase, with the exception of returning all the bodies of the hostages, but all the other things have happened, and that in itself was a breakthrough. Now it was clear that the irony of this first stage, that for Hamas to carry out this hostage release, they would have to resume control of most of the towns and cities in Gaza, which is what we're now seeing. This is how Hamas takes control. This is how Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip back in 2007 when they carried out a coup against the Palestinian Authority. These are the same scenes of executions and of fighting.
Yes.
So once again, this is not surprising. And the question has always been, how quickly can the mediators, the United States, Egypt, Qatar, get together to form a new government, to appoint what are being called technocrats to this new government, and probably more difficult, how to which countries are going to actually deploy forces there as this stabilization force, and we still don't have any idea. We can guess which countries are likely to send, but none of them have yet proposed that they will be the ones deploying men and personnel to to Gaza.
So, Angel, how will the next stage of this Gaza plan materialise? I've just been looking at a report in the Times of India, which says that the technocrats who are going to be working under what's called the Board of Peace, effectively the new interim government of Gaza, that they have been nominated, their names have been put in. I mean, how is it going to transpire? Who's deciding, yes, that will do that, he or she will be in that job or not?
Well, the countries which are immediately have the power to intervene in Gaza are the neighboring countries. That's Israel and Egypt. Now, the things that Israel can't do, because if Israel appoints a government, they will have no credibility. So this is right now, this report that you mentioned came from the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, that they already had 15 names of these technocrats, and they're now being approved by Israel, because if Israel says we won't work with these people, they can't do any of their civilian roles which need coordination with Israel for all the things going into Gaza, the supplies, electricity, and so on. So there has to be, first of all, a civilian government there, or some kind of administration that can just work. So that's the first stage, and that does seem to be starting now. Israel will perhaps veto some of these names; they'll vet them, and assuming there is this government or temporary government ready to move in. That is the first stage. But even if they are improving, even if they stop carrying out their various civilian roles, the question of control there ultimately is a question of military control, of having men with guns who are there to keep the peace and to keep Hamas at bay. And that is the next stage. The next stage is how to carry out this very difficult and dangerous issue of disarming Hamas. Now, Hamas won't just disarm and give over their arms to some civilian group. There has to be some kind of military force there. You also need the knowledge of how to decommission various military infrastructure and weapons. So all these things are supposed to happen in the coming days, weeks, and months. And we thought maybe we would see some kind of indication yesterday in that conference in Sharm el-Sheikh after the second stop of Trump's visit. But that was a very perfunctory, really short event, and I think it was mainly just about creating this spectacle for the benefit of Donald Trump. And hopefully some of his officials are involved now in actually moving things forward.
Yes, and naturally some interest in this country, in Britain, as to whether Keir Starmer's offer of Britain to play a role in the disarmament process, on the basis of the experience of the Northern Ireland Troubles. Jonathan Powell, who has been instrumental in putting this deal together, along with the Tony Blair Foundation. He has not. You're telling me that's not the case?
I haven't heard from anyone here that Jonathan Powell was in any way a major factor or There obviously the countries which have ties with Israel, such as Britain and Germany and France, have been, I think, mainly an observer role. It's not. I don't think that Jonathan Powell was key in anything. And I think Britain, and I say this also as a British citizen myself, should kind of get a grip on what it can do. I mean, all this talk of the experience of the Good Friday Agreement, that was many years ago, and it's a very, very, very different scenario in every way. I think Britain has enough things to concentrate on, rather than boasting that they can get these things achieved. I mean, we all have a lot of criticism for Donald Trump, but he did manage to underline once again how the United States has a level of influence on events here that no other country has. And quite frankly, to start kind of boasting of Britain's role here isn't very useful.
Yeah. It's a really, really interesting perspective, Angela. I mean, I suppose I have in mind when I put the question, Steve Witkoff, congratulating Britain on its role in all of this, and the Tony Blair Institute reported to have had a role in drafting the document. But I'm so interested in hearing what you have to say, as always. Look,
various people had a role here, and Blair certainly is someone who manages to kind of be in these places. I'm not getting any real indication that he played a key role. That it was good. It seems to me that he was a bit more window dressing than an actual central player here. But who knows? Maybe as time goes by, more things will emerge, and we'll find out that I'm just maligning him and Powell, and they actually did major things. But I've tried to find out about this, and I haven't been able to find much more than a couple of minor details in which they have been involved.
Really interesting to talk to you, Angel. Thank you. Let's talk again very soon. Now, I want to welcome now to the programme Yair Zivan, the foreign advisor to the leader of the Israeli opposition, Yair Lapid, for the last decade, including during his time as Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Israel. Welcome to you.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So we saw and heard that effusive praise for Donald Trump and his role in securing the ceasefire and hostage release deal, but the subsequent stages of securing that peace and a stable future, they're so enormously challenging, aren't they? Can you just tell me, first of all, do you feel optimistic about that?
Well, I think we still feel the happiness from yesterday, the excitement from yesterday at seeing the 20 live hostages coming home. It's something that we've been working towards, praying for, hoping for the last 2 years. There are still 28 Israeli hostages, the bodies of 28 Israeli hostages still being held, 24, sorry, still being held in Gaza. And the struggle isn't over until all of them are back. So it's cautious optimism, but we have to keep the fight going, keep the struggle going, keep the pressure on Hamas to ensure that they stand up to their side of the deal.
Yes, I mean, goodness knows there are plenty of immediate and short-term complications to get through. Looking longer term now, we know, of course, that the Benjamin Netanyahu government, they dismiss the idea of a long-term ambition of a two-state solution in the Middle East. But Yair Lapid, the opposition leader for whom you work, he is open to the idea, is he not? Which might turn out to be significant in the medium and longer term.
Well, look, I think all of us recognize that today and since October 7th, we're further away from the possibility of a Palestinian state, not closer. And I think one of the things that we would say is before we go back to talking about that, we have to understand that the burden of proof has shifted to the Palestinians. It's the Palestinians that have to prove to us today that they can really fight terrorism, and that they are serious about that fight, that they're serious about getting rid of incitement out of their schools and their mosques, that they're serious about fighting corruption and about reforming themselves to get to a place where they're even able to govern themselves. We don't have that today. So I think even from the moderate opposition, our message to the world would be very clear, which is it's time for the Palestinians now to step up and prove, and even in the Trump plan, which I think was warmly welcomed by everyone, the expectation is first on the Palestinians to go through some very serious reforms. And we certainly all hope to see that happening.
Okay, interesting answer. Again, an immediate question. I mean, Israeli settlers have continued to move into and take Palestinian territory in the West Bank. Now, can that be allowed to continue if this process is to succeed?
No, look, I think one of the differences certainly between us and the government is our approach to those issues. When we see settler violence, it is something that we see first and foremost as a moral stain on Israel. Those people don't represent us, they don't represent the country, they don't represent our values. When it comes to illegal settlement growth, when it's illegal under Israeli law, then we should certainly be doing far more than this government is doing to prevent that. There are places which I think are in the consensus, which everybody understands, and which any Israeli government accepts. But when we see some of the extremism on our own side, we certainly do have to clamp down on that, and that's something that we've been very clear about, both when we were in government and now in the opposition. I wouldn't make the comparison, of course, between that and the horrors that we saw carried out by Hamas, which are on a totally different scale.
Right. Now, we have been talking very regularly about the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's thinking and strategizing. When the election comes, whenever that is, presumably at some point in the course of the coming year, what will the main opposition, your party's opposition pitch be in that campaign and that election?
Well, I think there are two things. First of all, you're right. We're in an election year. In the next 12 months, there'll be an election, hopefully soon. We're certainly ready for that to happen. And the Israeli public overwhelmingly wants change. We can see that in every poll for the last 2.5 years already now, where Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition doesn't come anywhere near to a majority. And I think it's important to remember that this is a government that does not represent the majority of Israelis anymore. Our argument will certainly be that a government that was in charge on October 7th cannot be allowed to carry on. A prime minister who was responsible for the greatest security failure in our history cannot be allowed to carry on. And it's time for a change. Israel needs something that is different. We represent the liberal camp. That comes with a set of values that we have that are different to the conservative, very conservative right-wing values of the current government. And that's a case we'll be making. But mostly for Israel to be able to move forward, to look to the future, it needs a change of government and a change of approach. And what we're offering is a coalition that spans from the left, from the Labour Party, the old Labour Party on the left, through Yesh Atid, the party of Yair Zivan, which is the biggest party in the opposition, two parties of the centre right and right, to come together and create a coalition that really represents a much wider spectrum of Israeli society and can govern the country more effectively. So you will see, I think, a group coming together with an enormous amount of experience. You have former prime ministers, defense ministers, chiefs of staff, finance ministers, foreign ministers, all within that group, and decades of combined experience who are ready to take the country forward.
All right, Yair Zivan, who's an advisor to the main Israeli opposition leader, Yair Lapid. Thank you so much for joining us. Let us talk again soon.
Thank you very much.